April 11th meeting of the Historic Landmarks Commission. First item on the agenda is public comment. Any member of the public may address the Historic Landmarks Commission for up to 2 minutes on any subject that is not on the agenda today, and that is within our jurisdiction. Seeing no public, I will close public comment and move to approval of. There's no public speaker slips, so I close public comment. Okay. So move on to approval of the minutes of the Historic Landmarks Commission meeting of March 28th. Do I have a motion? Motion by Lavoie, second by Boucher. Any additions, corrections, or clarifications, please? Commissioner Murray.
On page 3, item 1, at the bottom of the page in the motion, it says, consider adding an overlay showing proposed elements over the existing elevation. I thought that was just a comment, and it was really for future reports, by it's a suggestion for future reports. I did not take it to be this report.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I reviewed the tape, and it was the motion.
Okay. Thank you.
It was a motion? Okay. Leave it then.
Anything else, Commissioner Murray?
Let's see. One more on page 8. Page 8, item 6, under the motion is number 2. Any future installation shall be sensitive to the, I think we meant EPD requirements.
Okay.
Yeah. To the
sensitive
EPD
to
requirements.
EPD requirements.
Yeah.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Arias? Commissioner Arias has...
I'm sorry.
Okay. Commissioner Drury.
Page 4, item 2, under the motion. Item number 3 under the motion, the owners having indicated their support is appreciated is not clear to me. The owners have indicated their support.
For the designation.
Right. But that doesn't, that's not.
Okay, how about we just reword it? The HLC
Please.
appreciates the owner's indication
Of their support.
or the owner's support of the designation. Yes. Okay.
Something.
So the HLC appreciates the owner's support of landmark designation.
Good, thank you.
Anyone else? All in favor of the motion as of the minutes as amended?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
Sharp abstain.
Sharp and Winnick abstain. Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is the consent calendar. Ms. Gantz.
So, Mr. Chair, item A, 117 West Mason Street was final approval as submitted. Item B, 17 West Ortega Street was preliminary design approval and final approval as submitted. Item C, 114 Natoma Avenue was final approval as submitted. Item D, 200 block of Chapala Street was preliminary design approval and final approval as submitted with condition. Item E, 734 State Street was preliminary design approval and final approval as noted. And item F, 316 West Carrillo Street was preliminary design approval and final approval as submitted. And the last item G at 611 Paseo Nuevo was preliminary design approval and final approval as submitted. And those were all reviewed by Commissioner Sharp.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Sharp. Do I have a motion to ratify the consent calendar? Second. Boucher, Drury, all in favor? Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is announcements or requests by applicants for continuances and withdrawals, so on and so forth. Ms.
Mr. Chair,
Gantz.
yes, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Schallenberger will be absent today.
Why?
He's not feeling well.
Okay.
And we had received in the mail a public notice for, it's a notice of availability of a draft EIR for the South Coast HOV high occupancy vehicle project on US 101. So if anybody is interested in that review, you can come look at this flyer. I have it right here. And the project location is between Carpinteria and Santa Barbara.
Do you know what off-ramp in Santa Barbara it goes to? approximately?
I don't, it doesn't say here.
Mr. Berman, do you know if any of that HOV encroaches or is on the EPV district or the designated scenic highway?
Chair Sutting, I believe it is not in the EPV, but it may be in the scenic highway. Not certain.
Right.
And what this notice is saying is the draft environmental impact report comment period is open, and it's inviting members of the public to attend 2 meetings to discuss the EIR, open public forums. And it goes from where 192 intersects with the 101, or 144, sorry, intersects with the 101.
That's the
To Carl.
southerly boundary.
Yeah, westerly boundary, yes.
Okay, westerly.
What's that, Milton's?
I think it's just east of Milpas. I think it's right by the bird refuge.
Uh-huh. So it goes from there
Down to,
To
Goes
Carpinteria.
to Carpenter.
Yes.
And is it adding a lane or is it converting a lane?
They're adding a high occupancy vehicle, HOV lane,
Right, so it's an additional.
on in each direction, I believe.
Wow.
Ultimately, the Caltrans intends to have 3 lanes in each direction all the way to Ventura.
All right, but that's not like a 4th lane. They're
No.
Dedicating we already knew about the 3rd one. Okay.
okay. Mr. Berman, could you please double check on the applicability of that HOV lane in the EPV district and how much of it is within the scenic highway corridor? I think we need to be aware of the changes, and this seems like the appropriate time to get on board with that at the EIR, draft EIR level. And if it does incorporate a significant part of the historic scenic highway, then I would like to know about it and review it, please.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I just wanted to report, you need to know the meeting.
Mr. DeForest, can you come up to the microphone, please? Thank you.
What does this pertain to?
This pertains to the hearing and This pertains to the environmental impact report for the widening or the EPV lane on 101. The big, and it on Tuesday at 5:30, there's the meeting at the Montecito Country Club. They're going to talk about it. Also, but I gather this plan has various alternate proposals for exits and entrances from the from the bird refuge to all the way to Carpinteria, but there are various entrances that would impact, and I would think the ones by the bird refuge, or the proposed ones by the bird refuge, would impact. I don't know about quite impact the EPV, but certainly definitely the scenic highway.
Okay, thank you, Mr. DeForest. Any other announcements?
No, I don't believe so. But actually, the Montecito meeting is Tuesday, April 24th, at 5 p.m.
At the Montecito
at the Montecito Country Club, Santa Cruz Room. And then in the second location is Wednesday, April 25th, 5 to 8:30 p.m. at the Carpinteria High School cafeteria.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Rios.
if that subject is done, I have a question to ask. When would we be notified of the replacement for the stone pine tree?
Ms. Gantz, do you have any information on that? Okay.
Could we ask staff to find
Sure.
out when the replacement is going to be?
I'm sure Mr. Limon will.
Yeah.
Yes, I'll ask him to let us know, to let you know.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Any announcements? Any subcommittee reports? Commissioner Murray.
Subcommittee on Designations meeting this morning, And there's a couple of important items I want to tell the board, the commission. There's been a draft of letter by Jaime going to be sent to the owners of this Anthony Seminary to start the designation process. The chair has reviewed that letter, and he's going to sign it along with the staff. So that's a big item coming up. It's going to really commend the owners for all the work they've done, and hope to work together to get the designation. The other one is the library, the trees. There's been a proposal for Bob Cunningham to designate the trees, eucalyptus in front of the library, and we had a discussion on it, and we thought since the library is on the potential list, it would be good to designate both the library, the two buildings of the library, as well as the trees, and make it a one strong full package. So working on that, and as soon as we get the city historian, that would be one of his first tasks. And let's see, there are other items, we call them the landmark hot list. So these are things on the pipeline for landmarking buildings or designating them. So we'll be coming up to you for that. Thank you.
Can you just briefly name those ones that are on the
Yes.
hot list?
Well, the top one, of course, is the St. Anthony Seminary. There's 920 Tremonto Road, 1115 De La Viña Street, and El Encanto. That's also right in the pipeline. It'll be coming up. The West Beach Historic District, the Bangkalo Haven Historic District, Rosemary Lane.
Okay.
These, and then the other big one, and which has been proposed by the neighbor, is the Alfonso neighborhood in the Diana Lane, and they have neighbor has come forward with identifying 27 structures in that neighborhood that were designed by Alfonso, and a lot of them are intact. So the staff and the subcommittee are going to look into that. So a lot of good things coming up, and so we'll be bringing to you and, as they come along.
Okay, thank you.
Anything
Chair sitting,
else I missed?
members of the commission, I just want to clarify the memorandum that Ms. Murray described that we're sending to San Roque School Charitable Trust. I thought the HLC subcommittee, designation subcommittee, had recommended that it be signed by the chair of the Historic Landmark Commission and not by Mr. Lamone. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Correct, and I have reviewed it and made some changes to it.
I
So.
see, and I have the changes, and
Okay.
I'll make them and get them back to you as soon as
Great.
possible.
Okay. Any other subcommittee reports? None. Then we will move on to the first item on the agenda, which is item number 1, and that is 500 Fowler Road. This is a review after final of the following changes to the approved plans to relocate and rehabilitate the original 1942 terminal building. Replace all exterior stucco, replace the decorative stair riser tile, omit installation of one new window on the east elevation, and install frosted glazing in the ladies' restroom windows. I vote for the last one. No, I think those ladies should have frosted windows. Do the men have frosted windows?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Good afternoon. I'm Leif Reynolds with the Santa Barbara Airport. And
Okay, hold on one second,
Okay.
and we got a little mishap here. No. Little technical difficulty. Okay, do we have 3 copies of the plan? Yep. Okay. Okay, thank you. Can you do the windows too? don't forget the floors. Okay, go ahead, please.
okay. Yes, Leif Reynolds with the Santa Barbara Airport, project engineer for the project.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm Andrew Bermond, the case planner assigned to airport projects.
Welcome.
We're here today to give you a brief status update of our project and also request the items that you've already read off. As I'm sure you're all aware, part of our airline terminal project involves the relocation of the former airline terminal building, and that relocation has taken place at this time. when we drew up the plans to relocate the terminal, there was a lot of assumptions made, and some of those assumptions have turned out to not be accurate. For instance, in regards to the stucco, a lot of the stucco on the building that we list on our plans to remain is already gone. So when the remodels were done and when they butted up additions to this building, they removed stucco at that time. So before we even touched the building, we had full walls with no exterior stucco because they were now interior walls. In addition, the condition of the stucco that did remain was very poor in that it had been cut through and patched on several occasions, and as such, we found that patching the stucco is going to be problematic. When we got to this point and realized how bad of condition the stucco was in, we had an expert out from Technical Services Group. They represent the Stucco Institute, and they basically told us that with the condition of the building paper, which is brittle at best, there's no way that we could patch the remaining stucco and to have a watertight structure. We have an architectural historian on our project team. She was at the meeting, and she wrote a letter to the effect of that she supports the replacement of the stucco for the building. So we're here for 4 reasons. First of all is just to confirm that's what we're requesting, is a full replacement of the stucco. The second item is the staircase here on the tower does not have the original tile on it. About 10 years ago, we had severe leaking in the tower there, and so we had all the tile replaced at that time. During the moving process and before that, this colorful tile was damaged. It was
That's our high-tech point.
yeah, it was scheduled to be to remain, but once it was damaged, again we consulted with our architectural historian, and she said that's fine. Let's get rid of it all and put in a quarry tile, which was similar to what was installed when the building was constructed. So that's the second item we're requesting today. And then the third item was these windows shown on this elevation were shown in the original drawings of the terminal. And of course, this was an interior wall when we went into the project. Turns out one of these windows, this one here, was never framed in to the original structure. So we're requesting to not install this window that's shown on our elevation because it was never installed previously. And then lastly, this window here is in the women's restroom, and so we simply want to frost the glass on that. So that's our that's
your
what we have
proposal
here
today.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
And I'll go to staff comments.
Chair, sitting members of the Commission, staff recommends that the building be reevaluated after it has been restored to determine the exact level of significance, because it's unclear now whether it would be a landmark or a structure of merit after all these restorations have occurred.
What is it now?
It's
A
on the
potential?
list, on the potentials list.
Okay. Okay, very well.
And the
We
report
certainly
does
wouldn't
say
want to.
It maintains its historic significance, but it doesn't say after the move what level.
Okay, I gotcha. Okay. Public comment. Seeing no public, I will close public comment and go to questions from the Commission. Commissioner Lavoie, I think, was first, and then Commissioner Rios.
Mr. Berman,
you're in trouble.
there was a very long, detailed report written at the beginning of the airport saga that talked in great extent about the relocation and the cost to relocate what was thought to be a landmark that would seem to be an incredible waste of taxpayer money to move a structure of merit. I'd suggest that you revisit those reports, because it was always assumed that some restoration work would have to be done just by the nature of how much was being torn off the building.
Chair, sitting members of the Commission, I did review the report. But the report concentrates more on the impacts of restoring the building as compared to what it is now. The question we're raising is, after all this restoration has been done, what level of significance do we have left? It is true that it said it was eligible for as a landmark prior to this restoration project, sorry. But it's not clear to us in the reports, and I've reviewed them all. There is not just one, there are several reports. And they aren't very clear on this issue. They are clear on it remaining as a historic resource, but they're not clear on whether at what level.
Commissioner Rios? The question has been answered. Thank you. Any other questions? I have a question. Are there going to be any expansion joints within the fields of plaster or stucco?
Yes, we asked that same question to the gentleman from Technical Services. As you're all aware, there's guidelines for expansion joints. We've also asked if, and of course we're doing the minimum, but that you can still see them, and we've asked if we can fill those joints. We have not received an answer. In other words, put the joint in, but then fill it so you don't see it, if you will.
But you do see it. Okay. Any other questions?
Yes. Were there any of these tiles salvaged from all the moves and the?
So the question is, were any of the tiles salvageable, or were they salvaged?
The answer is no. Those tiles, as most of the tiles in the terminal, contain lead-based paint, and as such, anything that contained lead-based paint was removed from the terminal prior to the relocation effort.
Do you have a sense of when those tiles were installed? Was that as part of the original construction?
No, 10 years ago.
10 years ago. Right.
We had that the stairs were leaking, and so we removed
Okay,
all
I
the
must have
tile.
missed that. Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Any other questions? Commissioner Winnick.
I have a question, and we have this report from Architectural Resources, a group that rendered an opinion. So my question is, in their report, they make recommendations of a procedure to follow through on the methodology of, holding on to some portion of the building to maintain it as a control sample until new plaster samples have been able to emulate it in color and texture and all that. So I just want to ask the question that, are the procedures and everything that's been suggested in this report from ARG being followed in the proposed facade work that you're doing to replaster the building?
Yes, we have Justine, who wrote that letter, on our team, and we worked out a location for a mock-up at her, with her approval, and then we won't be removing any of the stucco on the building until we complete the mock-up, and she comes up and looks at it and approves it. So yes, we're following those recommendations.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions? How about comments? Commissioner Drury, any comments? I do not. Commissioner Murray? Commissioner Boucher?
I, for one, feel that this is an extremely important building, and I think it's landmark worthy, even though it's been there.
Okay. Commissioner Sharp?
I would agree with Ms. Boucher, and I'm also concerned about the expansion joints, and I'm not totally convinced that we need to put them in per the representatives in the Plastering Association.
Okay.
I would agree with that.
Okay, we have an agreement on that. Commissioner Murray, any comments? Commissioner Lavoie?
Due to the amount of work that was done in evaluating this building prior and to this design, it was always the assumption of the committee, of the airport design committee, that all of that work was being done and not affect the historical status of the building, including its move and its potential resurfacing. So nothing can be done wouldn't be appropriate to that restoration, and that includes there shall be no expansion joints where there are not expansion joints on the original building.
Commissioner Winnick, anything different?
Is it on? Can't tell.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Not significantly different, but I wanted to kind of just weigh in on this too. I've, in fact, had the good fortune of working with Architectural Resources in the past on a project, and I do trust their counsel a lot. And so, anyway, in that, I would just like to say that regarding the expansion joint issue, they know basically how to balance between technical advice that one is getting and making a building historic and being true to its historic nature. So I would invite that they be asked to render an opinion on this issue of how to go about building the building, making it watertight and not put in the expansion joints. I believe that they could be an asset to help with that. And I also think that a building can be moved successfully and still remain on landmark status and be reclad. So I support that this building still be considered a landmark on that track. Thank you.
Commissioner Arias?
My only comment is that I support it being a landmark, and I leave the structural aspects up to the experts that you have consulted with. Okay. Also, I think its final use, which would be a museum, also indicates that it is important to this community.
Thank you. Commissioner Murray?
Yeah, my only comment is that normally this kind of letters that there's been a new findings in the building, normally this kind of letters come to the HLC for review and acceptance. And this is a kind of a little different because we have not really reviewed this letter and accepted to really see what's going on. So my suggestion would be when that mock-up comes up, I think it's good for the commission to see it so we understand what you are doing, because this has to be treated like a landmark. And there's no ifs and buts about that. And so even though we trust this group of historians, I think it's really the purview of the HLC to review the changes and accept the experts' opinion. Because we are the ones who have to landmark it, and most of the commissioners know what materials and all that stuff. So that would be my suggestion, if that's okay with the chair and the commission.
Chair Sutting, members of the commission, can I interject a comment or two, please?
Does it pertain to the last comment?
No.
Okay, then let me ask a question first. You said you were going to replace this with quarry tile?
Yes, it's what Justine with Architectural Resources has recommended. She specified a tile for us.
Do you have a sample of that, or?
No, I do not.
No. Okay.
I have the specification, but not with me. She gave us the exact tile.
Okay. Mr. Berman.
Chair Sutting, members of the commission, I perhaps didn't make myself really clear on what staff is trying to accomplish regarding this reevaluation of the building's significance after rehabilitation, but what we're after is we're requesting that the HLC consider requesting that the applicant provide us with some documentation to tell us what level of significance it remains, and after that report would then come to the Historic Landmark Commission, and you would have an opportunity to ratify it, and then the process could proceed.
I understand. Everybody understand that? Okay. So just let me ask the question from the rest of the commissioners. With the exception of what comments we've already made with respect to the exterior stucco, nobody has a problem with replacing that so far. How about the decorative stair riser tile? We're all okay with that. And the omission of one new window in the east elevation, and then frosted glazing in the ladies' restroom windows. Okay. Now, let me ask a question. I'm sorry, I keep going back to question. So that's like actually a sandblasted glass or a frosted glass? It's not a film?
That's correct. Frosted glass that's not a film.
Okay. Would there be any benefit to doing a film as opposed to glass? Okay.
No.
All right.
Could be etched glass, too.
Yeah, sandblasted edge,
I think
whatever.
something
Okay.
permanent.
All right, so you are here for review after final. I think we should probably continue this until the mock-up sample is ready for us to look at.
We would like to proceed with the mock-up.
Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I guess it doesn't matter. if
Yeah.
you-
No.
Okay.
You've heard our concerns, which
Right.
basically are no expansion joints, and that the stucco match the existing in texture and finish and color and all that. But in order to give it final approval, the Historic Landmarks Commission needs to see the final mock-up, or the mock-up, and then you can get final.
Exactly.
And the stair tile. You want to see samples of the stair
Sure.
tile.
Yep.
So I'm going to probably give this an indefinite, or do you think you could be ready in 2
Indefinite.
weeks? 2 weeks, okay?
Indefinite, I'm
Okay.
sorry.
So I'll entertain a motion for an indefinite continuance. I have a motion by Arias and a second by Sharp. Did you get that? Okay. It was an indefinite continuance, motion by Arias, second by Sharp. The one time I did it right, and she didn't catch it.
No, because I was asking a question. I thought maybe you were still waiting for a report to be accepted by you before you
No,
could
that's
move
not what
on.
we're reviewing. Yeah, we're reviewing the changes to
Yep.
the plaster. We're not
Yes.
reviewing the report or anything like that.
But is there a report still to come to? Okay, thank you.
No, that's going to be a separate application. That would have to be a separate application, I assume.
Yes, but we're looking maybe at the next hearing on this issue for...
A recommendation for...
Yeah, correct.
Okay. I think we can actually give that now. We might as well give that now. Would the maker of the motion like to include in that motion that we recommend the owner pursue a designation status?
I'm happy to, yes.
Okay. And the seconder?
Yes.
Okay.
Chair Sitting, not that they pursue a designation, that they
That they-
pursue
The
The
report.
a
report.
report
Thank
to
you.
identify the level of significance after construction.
Thank you.
Yeah, I concur with that statement.
That's what I meant to say.
Okay, and since there is a report, this is what I thought. I just want to make sure that the historian that you choose is on the city qualified list. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries.
I have a logistical question. Is the board going to come out to view the mock-up? It's fine if they do. I'm just curious.
Can you carry it?
No.
Then we will be doing a site visit, a field visit.
Okay.
Okay?
All right,
Thank you. We look forward to this finally wrapping up and opening up.
We do too.
The next item is scheduled for 2 o'clock. We are 25 minutes ahead of schedule. I
10-minute break.
suggest that we take at least a 10-minute break.
These are 2 letters being submitted for the next time. We have one more. Have you seen those?
It was emailed to
Yeah.
We did, yes, we did. The dog when you
Historic Landmarks Commission meeting, and I believe Mr. Berman has some answers to the questions I asked previously about the Caltrans HOV project.
Chair, sitting members of the Commission, the answer to your questions are, I believe the project is within El Pueblo Viejo, but only just. It's very hard to understand from the EIR the extent of the project, but the boundary of the EPV is right in that area, and I would say it's in. But I'm not certain, and if it's not in, I'll let you guys know real soon, okay?
It seems to me, though, that the EIR should address if it is or isn't in EPV.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Okay. And the next issue was about the scenic corridor.
Uh-huh.
It's not listed as 101 is not listed as a scenic corridor in the scenic element of the general plan. It's discussed, but it's not listed as a scenic corridor. So I think the answer to your question is it's not a scenic corridor.
Mr. Berman, isn't the...
Can you talk to the microphone, please?
Excuse me.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand, but they're here for 2 o'clock. We have time to answer these questions.
Question. I thought isn't the Cabrillo Boulevard the scenic corridor? Yes,
Yeah.
which
Yeah,
goes
but
up past the fountain and up to Hot Springs.
Yeah.
Well, then in that case, there may be an element of the project that's in the
Right.
scenic corridor.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Berman, for finding that. Yes.
Since you raised these points, excuse me. Since you raised these points, can we request staff to please
Determine the scope of the EIR and if the scenic highway and EPV, so that we know, because as I understand, the EIR is now open for comments.
Right.
And that should certainly be a comment that is made and should be cleared up.
And I am aware that the planner that's reviewing it is Dan Gullett, and I will be touching base with Mr. Gullett. Okay, next item on the agenda is item number 2, 2300 Garden Street. This is a second concept review. Action may be taken if sufficient information is provided. Project was last reviewed on March 28th, and this is a proposal to legalize the following as-built conditions: a bunch of linear fence, a bunch more of linear construction, temporary construction fence, some safety fencing, drinking fountains, outdoor sinks, steps and handrail, temporary mobile water closet, screening planters, temporary flagstone walkway, so on and so forth. Why don't you introduce yourselves for the record and give us a brief presentation?
I'm Mary Rose, representing San Roque School Charitable Trust.
Welcome.
Ken Minot with Appleton and Associates.
Welcome. Turn on that microphone, please. There you go. Thank you.
Joe Mendoza with Appleton Associates.
Welcome. Go ahead.
Okay, we were here 2 weeks ago, and we definitely heard that you do not want to legalize many of the as-built conditions on a permanent basis. We do have them there as a, many of them as temporary basis, and I don't think they're here yet. We've also engaged Post Hazeltine to help us with sorting out some of the things as we go forward again.
We do have Mr. Hazeltine here. Other side.
There he is. Missed him. Okay. You had asked at the last meeting to come up with a schedule. I have a brief schedule in terms of, this is sort of an in-process of when the already approved projects will be built, because many of the temporary facilities, the temporary fencing, are screening the construction work. The shop building area, and you can look at this area is here.
Oops,
And
here
as
you
you
go.
can see, there's fencing, there's temporary plantings here, and back in here, this area. This is also taking up some of the parking, which, because of the construction, is not available, which is why the request for the parking, the temporary parking in this area. They anticipate beginning re-engaging the construction on the shop in June of this year to be finished by December. The outdoor theater, the classroom area here, and these arcades, they will be starting up in June of 2012 to be finished by June of next year, 2013. Then the current plan is to then start back on the gymnasium to finish the structural work there in January of 2013 to finish by January of 2014. The main building is still, the timing on that is not yet exactly set. And we're working on this. So we're trying to get all the pieces together for the construction schedule, which you asked for 2 weeks ago, and it's just taking us a little bit longer than we had anticipated. At the areas of the portable fencing, the the temporary screening plantings, those will go away as the buildings are being constructed. And the fencing and other things would all go away. We had originally thought of March of 2014. We anticipate that all being done. However, getting it back to then a landscaped, putting it back together, they're expecting by August of 2014. So if the portables and things are gone in March, re-landscaping, doing that, and back in place August. So that's the current timeline. You'd asked for a timeline that would get them there. The original from about 2005, we were talking about the end of 2012, so we're looking at about an 18-month, a little bit more than that, addition to the current timeline of the temporary features going away. The fences, we know, are of concern for neighbors, and I was just handed a letter from the neighbors, which I have not had a chance to review. I think you all have it now as well. The school needs fencing. There is provisions in the municipal code for fencing, a school site, and state health and safety codes and other things. We want to work with you. We want to work with the neighbors on where this fencing is and the look of the fence. And we did. I know that the fence here was of great concern to you at the last meeting. So just as a start for the beginning to look at an alternative design, you had suggested we look at the fencing that is at Notre Dame School, which we did. And I will let these two gentlemen from Appleton explain sort of, Joe, you want to talk a little bit about that fencing treatment and the two options that are there?
Yeah, we just have a basic fence, be 6 feet high to match the same height as the chain link fence that's there. And we threw in a couple options. We can have in some screening, so it's just to show as little of it as possible. And then the difference between the two is just having a little man gate, so you don't have to open the whole gate to if you need to do some landscaping or mail service or whatever.
So, I mean, we're trying. We know you don't like the chain link, and we do need fencing. So there's a little bit of flexibility of exactly where that fence can be. It can't move too far up the driveway, or people will drive in and then back out, which would be a safety problem. So, did we have a couple of options for?
On the site plan.
This is the one that they can.
Yeah. So you need to move over here.
That bulleted pointer is specially made.
Okay.
You can use the black tip though.
Okay. Well, this is the as-built existing position with a thicker red line, and like Mary said, we don't want to push it up because we want vehicles pulling in and backing out. So either we keep the same position or we hold it flush to the existing as-built fencing that's hugging the property line.
Okay.
And that will,
So really, that's essentially what we're here today, is to talk about that as an alternative. If you like that look of that fence, we can look at where else it would be appropriate to have it. If you want something else in terms of a fence, there was, there's historically been chain link on part of this property. So, and it is a school site, which allows for chain link. So, again, I know there was concern about these plantings that obscure the building. They will go away when these go away. They were installed in the ground, as I explained last week, because they weren't doing well in the pots, and they are to screen these, not to screen the building. That is not the design, is not to screen these buildings. It is to screen these and to kind of create just a more workable space around these areas. These will go away. Again, the temporary water closet is until they can get back into the gymnasium with bathrooms, etc. So, and that tree we can make go away. We know that one was. So that's kind of our presentation. I'm here to answer questions. I know there's people from.
Do you have a proposal for the permanent security fencing?
The locations are as proposed here.
The design.
And the design, we wanted to see whether you liked this type of a
Okay.
design, this railing, before we were looking for some more feedback, because the owner, as I said last time, has
'Cause-
looked at the municipal code and would like to keep the chain link.
Because this is labeled northwest gate, not security fencing. So, but this
Right.
is what you're proposing for
Well-
perimeter security fencing as well as the gate.
We would like your input as to if that's
That's what you're
something acceptable.
proposing. Yes or no?
The owner has proposed the chain link. There is a question as to whether the chain link would be acceptable, and that's what we're still waiting for. I mean,
Okay.
this is for the gate as a treatment of something we could do at that area.
Okay. Staff have any comments?
I actually do, and I think Mr. Berman does also. We did receive a letter from the Upper East Responsible Dog Owners Group, and I think you all received a copy of that. And the only comment I want to make on that is that it was regarding access to the grassy area and playfields. It's not within the HLC's authority to condition or require public access onto the property.
Thank you.
And then on the reverse of that letter, they are asking for conditions by you when you approve this, among other things, is that the area be restored as an open lawn area for use by neighbors and their dogs. That would not, obviously, just because of what I just said, you would not be doing that.
Okay.
And I believe Mr. Berman has some comments.
Mr. Berman.
Chair, sitting members of the commission, the applicant has provided us with some interesting information pertaining to the regulations of fences at schools. The city's own regulation, section 2887-170, section G, is permissive of using an open mesh type fence, but doesn't require it. It would be allowed if the HLC was so to approve. But the rest of the regulations are regarding that there are going to be fences required for safety reasons in various different locations. And I'm not sure that's the issue you're getting into now, but I just wanted to let you know we do have all that information if you want.
Okay. Does that municipal code address citywide, or does it say anything about except in EPV or anything of that nature?
It's citywide.
Citywide.
But it doesn't say you have to use chain mesh. It says you may use chain mesh.
Okay. Huh. Interesting. Okay. Questions from the commission? Commissioner Drury, any questions?
I believe there are some regulations about height, depending on where the fences are in the city zoning ordinance, of course. But also I think there's some regulations in the health and safety code, and I haven't reviewed all of that yet.
We could figure that out at some point.
There's
I
nothing
think we
in what
will.
we have here about heights.
Okay.
But I know there are regulations about the size of a sphere that can go through a fence for safety and stuff like that.
Okay.
But we don't have that here either.
Any other questions, Commissioner Drury?
Yes. So what I'm seeing on the screen underneath that lovely pointer, so that is proposed for the, I guess what we would say, the western gate that comes on the garden, and the gate to the south of that, the main entrance.
No.
There is no gate at the
I know.
south entrance. This is
So it's just for-
This is just this area right here is what we're talking about. This
For
seemed
that.
to be what this visible chain link. Most of the fencing, most of the chain link is not visible from offside the property. So so this is a spot that is visible to the public right of way, which is why we were addressing it in specific today, is to say, would this be an acceptable treatment? We can, the owner would like to keep the chain link fencing, which is permitted in the zone district, in the yard by the municipal code, but is willing to, where it's aesthetic to the exterior and seen, if it's not seen, there's been chain link here that's been obscured by plants for years. But in the areas where it would be new and it would be seen, this is the treatment that is being proposed.
Let me
Mr.
ask a quick question. What about this gate here, proposed as-built gate here?
We have not specifically looked at that. We certainly could, if you like that, if you
Okay.
like this treatment, we could look at this for here and here,
Okay.
at essentially the three gates. I think you have
All
something
four
in
gates,
this-
really.
4 gates,
Yeah.
yeah. We could look at that. But there is no gate plan
Right.
for the main entrance.
Not really your property. Okay. Ms. Giance?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, we do have, of course, wall and fence height limitations. In this zone, E1 zone, no fence, screen, wall, or hedge located in the required setbacks shall exceed a height of 8 feet. However, if it's within 10 feet of a front lot line, which this one would be, or 10 feet of either side of a driveway, and for a distance of 20 feet back, it cannot be over 3.5 feet.
Thank you. Commissioner Drury, any other questions?
Yeah, so would that pertain to a school? Is there any special, that's just the way it is?
Yeah, I mean, this is zoning. You know, this is zoning fence height restrictions for A, E, R, CO, and CX zones. And yes.
Commissioner Boucher, any questions? Commissioner Sharp?
Yes. What is the height of the Notre Dame fence that we approved? And is that in the required front yard?
I do not know. Is it 6 feet? Well, there's that's a front lot line, so I'd have to research that. I don't know why it was.
These
That
fences
was-
are 6, these are proposed to be 6, and we're reading the municipal code of any fence.
Right,
So,
but
yeah.
the Notre Dame school, that was probably a legal nonconforming situation. It was probably put up before this.
Well, the new fence that they use, the wrought iron black, that wouldn't be legal non-conforming because they changed the material
was
and
brand
changed
new.
the location of it, so it could no longer
have
be
to look
legal
into that.
non-conforming. But
Thank
the
you.
rest of it, yes. Any questions, Commissioner Murray?
Yeah, let me just get this here. So you are, these 4 fences, you are requesting that they become permanent? Is that
You mean the gates?
the
Four
gates, the 4
gates.
gates?
Yes.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. Commissioner Lavoie, any questions?
There's an existing gate that either to the Hoffman property and or St. Anthony's that is a big old wood plank gate? Question mark?
Right in here?
Yeah,
This gate.
that gate. No, there's a gate down by the road.
Yes.
Oh, down here, yes.
Yeah.
That's to the Hoffman property. That's not this property.
Okay.
You did, when you reviewed
Thank
this-
you. That the and there are stone piers at the gate at the wall corners, right?
Yes.
There, yes.
Thank you.
Commissioner Winnick, any questions?
No question.
Commissioner Arias?
No questions.
Okay. I'm going to open public comment, and I apologize I didn't do that before questions, but sometimes it's helpful for us to ask our questions before public comment, so I just rationalized that. First member of the public is Kellum DeForest, followed by Lisa Burns.
Mr. Chair, before Mr. DeForest gets the microphone,
Well, can
the
you walk
Notre Dame
towards the light?
school, the Notre Dame school received zoning modification for that overhang fence.
Okay, thank you.
Kellum DeForest. I think and I thought it had that the entire property, or at least the property that's so visible of this historic structure, should be considered a cultural landscape. And I, in my memory, I don't think it ever was fenced, because a fence impacts the view of this historic structure, which the school has kept for our edification and understanding of Santa Barbara's history. I don't think, and I don't even know whether this fence, the proposed fence, which I presume then would be the perimeter fence, fits the EPV guidelines. I would think it would have to be wrought iron to fit the guidelines. And I think it would be useful, at least for me and others, why I guess you have to, I mean, this is a high school, I guess you have to keep the kids in tow so they won't wander off, but, but the necessity for a fence has not been proven to me. And if so, does it need, and any fence needs to conform to the EPV guidelines. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeForest. Lisa Burns will be followed by Fred Sweeney.
Thank you, Chair Suding, members of the Commission. I want to thank you for your time today and all the time that you put into all these projects that you have to review. You have my sympathies and my heartfelt thanks.
Well, thank you. We appreciate
I want to echo what Mr. DeForest just said, which is the cultural landscape. And in response to Susan, and I'm so glad Mr. Berman's here from the California Environmental Quality Act perspective, I believe this is a cultural landscape. And since the owners have taken over, that landscape, the feeling of that site has changed. It is now a very closed feeling. It's not the open, expansive feeling where you could see the tower and St. Anthony Seminary, certainly one of the 5 most beautiful buildings in Santa Barbara, maybe the top 2. So I would say that I think that they have made a significant impact on the environment by closing it in by fencing, and particularly what used to be a temporary construction storage area in that lower lawn area with gravel is now a parking lot. That's the most unsightly part of the whole thing. And I know that's only temporary, but that should be open green space, because that is the gateway through the beautiful gates that you see, the magnificent, if you saw it from the picture, of St. Anthony Seminary. That's what people take photographs of, and it's difficult to get a good view of it now. You can hardly get a picture of it. So in my mind, that's a significant impact on the environment. It is a cultural landscape, and it should become under your purview. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sweeney, followed by Christina Foss, who is our last speaker. Oh, you didn't come prepared. Can we get a wide angle on this?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Suding, and Commissioners. My name is Fred Sweeney. I live in the Upper East Side, and I'm here representing the Board of Directors of the Upper East Association this afternoon. I've prepared for you Garden Street, just for your reference. That's what you see. I also have prepared for you photographs of the gate in question that you were just speaking of. And then to one of the commissioners' response, I think I have a picture of the Hoffman Estate gate in here somewhere. So you can look at that. That's for your information. I'm also providing you with, quite frankly, a list of questions that our board came up with. I confirmed this morning that Matt Construction, who was the general contractor, has been off the site for some period of time. I happen to have a colleague who was the superintendent on that job. He confirmed this morning that Matt is in discussion with further construction, but we'd like further clarification on the contractor's position. Also on the architect's position. Who is the architect of record? Is that Mark Appleton? Is it another architect? And the reason we ask that question is my experience shows that when you're doing these kind of complicated projects, the architect and or the general contractor has a very detailed chart of construction and sequencing of the work. And I think that a review of such a chart would allow staff, the commission, and certainly us as the neighbors to understand precisely when individual items are being taken off the project. So we prepared, and I'm not going to use all my 2 minutes to read the questions, but here are the questions that the board would like answered. And then we have a recommendation. We believe that since there's so many questions on the status of whether you can have a fence, not have a fence, et cetera, the position of some of the older buildings, do we have enough copies, et cetera, we would highly or strongly urge the commission to consider appointing a subcommittee of this panel to review these issues and then to take a site visit so that you all can see precisely what's been done out there and what's not been done through the course of this construction period. We think that's very important. As to the fence, and I can share just a bit with you, having spent a great deal of my career designing schools, I checked Title V this morning, which is the governing document for the state of California for public schools. That has no criteria for fences. The building code has no specific criteria for fences other than the fact that if they're under 6 feet, under normal building codes, depending how the municipality has adopted the Uniform Building Code of California, as to whether or not they require permit for a fence under 6 feet. One might think about the fact that there is another large private school within our vicinity. That's the Laguna Blanca School, which I had the fortune to work on a couple of times. That has no fences. So the contention that there has to be a fence in this property is really up to the school itself, not to the governing bodies, unless there's some documentation that I'm unaware of by a guidance group or some other organization that makes recommendations for private schools. Fences aren't required. Short of that, I'm done with my presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sweeney. Christina Foss.
Can I get a, Fred? Fred, can I get a copy of your list? I'm representing Mission Santa Barbara, and we share the driveway where some of this fencing is. And so we had a couple of concerns, and we'd just like to put them on the table, and I think I was unable to be here in your last session on this matter, so you may have addressed some of this, but we just would like to have you think about some of these. Since we share the driveway, one of the things that we've been observing is that the fencing around that parking area that's in question is around the parking area specifically has the green canvas up against it so that you don't look at the cars, which is all very nice and aesthetically attempting to make it look a little better than it does. But the result is that the parking area, when people come out of it into the driveway, it's a blind turn, and several of our staff have nearly been hit there. But we're more concerned about the fact that as they come out, there's often young people coming in or out of the school down those steps. And the steps really do need to be there. They seem to be an appropriate location as far as we can see. We don't have any problem with it. But the visibility issue is bothering us. We'd rather be staring at their cars than running over a child or being hit broadside as we go up and down the driveway with our own staff and the large number of retreatants that we have who use our retreat center, which is entered from the back driveway there. So we're a little concerned about the safety issue of that turn out from the parking area. And secondly, in terms of the safety issue, as the fencing is right behind the plantings at the edge of the driveway, there's a curb of a row of stones, there's a row of rather large plants, bird of paradise, and then there's the fence. This means that students walking up to those steps are walking in the driveway, aimlessly in the middle, quite frankly, so that if you're coming down the driveway or up the driveway, you can come past some greenery and suddenly find that there are a lot of people in the road in front of you. Now, while we drive very slowly who work there, we have a lot of visitors in that retreat center that may not be aware of the school. And we also, because we don't have either end of this driveway have a gate on it, we all know, and the neighbors all know, that it's straight through, and there's a lot of people in town who use that driveway as a shortcut. And they're coming from the bottom of APS straight through there, and we're a little concerned about the fact there isn't a pedestrian access to the steps. If the fence even was not moved back, but just left there, the only way you would accommodate that walkway would be to remove the plantings, which may not be aesthetically pleasing to no longer have the same plantings. We've tried on our side of the driveway to have the same plantings and the same situation, so it makes a nice cultural landscape view up the driveway. But from a safety position, I'd suggest they need to go. Maybe it can't be as attractive if there's going to be a fence there that pushes them out to the edge. So that, I think, is a safety concern and worries us a bit. So those are two of the main ones. The children also up at the other end where the planter with the tree was added, that used to be kind of a turnaround area to people who came in or out of the driveway. We have a lot of deliveries in that area because that's the back of our kitchen, which serves our entire facility. And what we're seeing there is that people waiting for staff and children are parking in the driveway next to the planter rather than having that whole circle. When waiting for people at the end of the day, and if a delivery truck comes in, then the driveway is blocked. That particular area up and down this driveway is supposed to be open for 2 fire engines to be able to pass. If we get the fences or the plantings too close, I have a concern that we are not meeting the fire standard on that road, and we just want to make sure that that is maintained. Because we talked about the gate down on Garden Street being a problem with a 3-point turn or people backing out onto Garden Street if the gate is in too far, which makes a lot of logical sense. But the planter does the same thing over here where the gate is indented and people come to pick somebody up, or on our side as well, our people visiting our facility doing the same thing. They'll come in the driveway and there's no more turnaround, and so they do a 3-point turn into that gate and out and back out into the driveway where, again, kids are walking. And I've been guilty of that little turn myself, so it's just a logical thing to do now.
With all due respect, I have to have you wrap it up pretty soon.
Yes, so those are our major concerns, also as the drainage changes that occur right with that planter, if those could be addressed. But they're primarily safety issues, the children and the numbers of people that we have using the driveway and the fire access.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Seeing no more public, I will close public comment, bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Rios, any comments this time?
Well, having listened to the initial discussion about the location of the fences and the gates, and knowing that it was a 3.5 feet ordinance, that I just see safety as a major problem for people on the street and all, and as such, it's not a good way to handle things. And backing out onto the street where it's blind is not good. So, to me, the safety factor is major, and I think that needs to be seriously addressed. I have a question to Mr. Berman. Is this high fire hazard area?
I'm not sure.
Yes.
It is?
It is. I thought it was. So there are specific rules and regulations regarding construction and landscaping and et cetera in high fire hazard areas that need to be also very carefully looked at and addressed in this project. So I have a lot of worries about this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Winnick, any
Mr.
comments?
Chair,
Yes?
before everybody makes their comments, I just want to make a comment so that everybody else doesn't make the same comment. Nikki Stute and Fire reviewed the plan, the change at that one gate, the planter right there. That was perfectly fine. It was reviewed by Nikki and also Joe Poire. They've signed off on it because they have actually made fire truck access better with the change on the other side. Mary, if you could point out on the, yes, they have made it better along that corridor there, so they're actually very happy with it.
And they have fire hydrants as well.
Okay, that's it.
And then regarding the fencing along the perimeter, fencing is allowed 3.5 feet tall, but if they are 10 feet back from the front lot line, it can go to 8 feet.
Right. Okay. Commissioner Winnick. Sure.
Or to the applicant, relative to the fencing height, that's what my question is. Are we within the 10 feet, or is what's being proposed within the 10-foot zone or set back? So maybe that's a question to the applicant.
Joe, it's very close. Joe,
Yeah.
is it?
I'm not quite sure, but it is close, like Mary said.
I think in future plans or future submissions of the plans, we need to have those dimensioned and shown and shadowed, just like any other plan that is submitted to the city. That needs to clearly be called out.
Okay, so I'll make a comment now that I got an answer. So since the answer wasn't definitive, I'll make my comment based on the answer that I'm imagining. So assuming that the fence is within 10 feet, I would just like to state that I would be in favor of staying within what the zoning ordinance, not look for variance and stay with the 3-foot, 3.5-foot tall fence. And I also agree with Mr. DeForest's observation that the fencing, if there's going to be fencing, should be wrought iron fencing. Even if chain link is permitted, I think since we're in EPV, we should be consistent with the nature of what the EPV guidelines state. That's it.
Commissioner Lavoie.
This is an easy one. The answer is no. I would support a motion for denial of the application as written. This is not approvable until we see a master plan for the entire property showing the final locations of the fence, a fence and a gate of a design acceptable to be adjacent or on the same property as an historical resource. The gate you've designed is not acceptable anywhere in the district. It is not acceptable in a piece of architecture as important and is finely designed as this one. And it should incorporate existing features of the site. And what's being proposed is not acceptable.
Commissioner Murray?
You have a motion on the floor.
Was that a motion?
He did not make
No.
a motion.
He said he would support a motion.
I do want to look at the schools, and Laguna also has no fencing. And I think I'm not convinced that security is an issue. I think it's just, no matter what, it should be treated as this is a landmark, and the whole site is really a landmark. So it would be very hard for me to support permanent gates all around and fencing. But I really appreciate this letter from Fred Sweeney. I think it's a really good thing for all of us to work together, to revisit the site, to get further knowledge of what really the project is, what is the timeline that we can live with, and really be so specific so we know at this date this is moving out and what is that going to be like. I think it will just give everybody a very comfort. We want to work with you. We want to make this the way it is, and to basically return it back to what it was like. And you have done a lot of great work. There's a tremendous respect and commendation to the owners for taking on this project and restoring it and doing this good work. And so to me, these are the touches icing on the cake. There's nothing to worry about, but to work together for the final a final ending of returning it back to its, historic elegance. So, so my position is to really, these are good ideas. And as I was walking around Laguna, and I haven't gone over to the campus, I was disturbed by the gates when I saw it. There was the feeling of closeness and, your feeling of this is in prison, and the neighbors have expressed those really well. The safety issue of the kids, my sense of safety is aesthetics is safety. Believe me, you go to the junior high and there's a beautiful, building and tiles. Nobody has ever put a graffiti on those buildings. Nobody. There is something about that. So I really would further see that you look into this and let's work together. Let's go over all this and come up with a good plan, a good way to resolve all these issues.
I think Commissioner Murray summed up my position very well, and it's probably because she sat next to me for so long. But I too could not support a project with this much fencing. It's just, you guys did such a wonderful job on the building, and now I hate to use the expression, but you're dropping the ball. You're just, you're ruining all the good stuff that you did. Well, not ruining it, you're detracting from it. So I would take that position. So I think that's fairly said. Another thing that I think would be very helpful is to show us, as Commissioner Lavoie alluded to, is a master plan. What is this going to look like March 31st, 2014? We have, all of these portables and things that are going to be removed. And yes, we can visualize that being gone, but prepare us a plan what it's going to ultimately look like. That's what we're after.
That's legitimate.
Yeah. Okay. And then lastly, I think that we either you need to get the neighbors involved a little bit more, because I'm not seeing that happening. And I would also want to entertain the idea of a subcommittee for this. As much as I hate to do it, because I know how much subcommittees eat up our professional time, this seems to me important enough to have a subcommittee.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Could I just make a comment? I was waiting for everybody to make their comments before saying this, but since you brought it up, I'm going to go ahead. Every item on this letter, except for number 5, needs to be addressed by the applicant. It's incumbent upon the applicant to answer these questions and present them to you. It is not up to you to ferret out this information. Now, if you feel like you want to have a subcommittee and work with them on other issues, that's fine. But this information here needs to be provided by the applicant to you, and you need to decide on how it looks.
Yeah. And I think, maybe before we go for a subcommittee, we let the applicant come back one more time and see, where we're going and address this, see where we're going, address our comments. Mr. Sharp, comments.
Well, I agree with you that Ms. Murray pretty well wrapped it up. There's not much left to say. I think Mr. Sweeney's letter is very important to be answered. We do want to work with you, believe me, always.
And we want to work with you. So
I know, and we're all headed in the same direction. I just want it to be as smooth as possible.
Commissioner Boucher, anything different? Commissioner Drury?
I just want to, first of all, thank Mr. Sweeney and Ms. Burns for your input. And I think the idea of it being a significant cultural resource is paramount here. And I'm just going to probably echo what's been said, but what I'm seeing is clutter. And it's a building that does not respond well to clutter. That frontal look from Garden Street up to that playing field and on above to the school buildings is really something that should be treasured. And I hope the applicant comes back with something that shows that care that we feel for the place.
Mr. Chair?
Yes. Commissioner Arias.
I think that in view of the comments that I've heard, and I agree with them, that changes in the plans would necessitate a re-review by the fire department for the safety factors. Because if they change Well, I've said it.
Yeah, yeah, if there's significant change, it will have to be re-reviewed. Okay, would you like an indefinite continuance or 2-week?
Give me indefinite.
Okay. I will entertain someone making a motion for an indefinite continuance. Commissioner Lavoie.
A motion for indefinite continuance with the applicant to return with a master plan showing both landscaping and security fencing and gates appropriate to this particular cultural resource and in conformance with the landmarks guidelines.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so we have a motion by Lavoie, second by Sharp. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Chair Sutting, members of the Commission, I'm sorry I neglected to bring forth to you a letter that was received by Jaime Lemon from Dick McLaren regarding the trail, also called the Paseo, that cuts mid-block between Plaza Rubio and Padre in the East 400 block.
I think it's too late.
Is it too late? Okay, next week, next hearing.
Yeah. Next time we see it. I'm sorry, Mr. Berman. Does the applicant understand the motion?
The applicant understands the
Okay,
motion.
very good.
The applicant will be working with staff and
Great.
may call one or two of you.
All right.
We'll do an insult.
I'm enlisted.
Mary, so if people from the school need to view the video and listen to the remarks, they can pull it up online.
Yeah,
Okay?
Your landscaping saved that building.
Which one?
Dialysis.
That's not mine. I didn't do it. I didn't do the landscaping. No. I don't know. Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah. I know. That whole thing is just an abomination. Yeah, no. I was off the commission right after that. Yeah, that was happening. It was just starting to happen. Yeah, no, I appreciate that, though. Yeah. Thanks, Pam. Next item on the agenda is item number... May I have quiet, please? Next item on the agenda is item number 3, 209 Paseo Nuevo. 209 Paseo Nuevo. Okay, this is a proposal to replace 8 existing retail vendor carts within the Paseo Nuevo Retail Shopping Center.
He's low.
Too low.
Now you're feeling. I'm looking at you now, up at you.
You hide faster. You might get a yeah. Okay, go ahead. Introduce yourselves to the record and give us a brief presentation, please.
Henry Lenny, Design Studio.
Welcome.
I'm Ryan Mills with DMA.
Welcome. Mr. Lenny is out of uniform.
I didn't have time to change. I apologize. A gray shirt and a
dark blue.
Yeah, dark blue. Somebody gave me this because it was really inexpensive, and so instead of wearing the black suit all the time, I don't want to ruin it. So
you're mixing it up a bit. Okay, go ahead, please.
Well, this is a new proposal for the new cards to replace the existing, and this is very conceptual, as you can see. They're approximately the same size as the existing ones. They're very different in concept. The thought was to add some red on top by using a standing seam, but close-spaced seams of the corrugated metal, perhaps, or something else.
Standing seam?
Yeah. The tile is probably not going to work there, or something else. Could be copper, I suppose, or some other things.
And then it's all going to be done out of wrought iron, all metal. And it's the way it works technically, or at least conceptually, is that these are hinged, these doors are hinged, and they have some sort of a chain of rope or something to lift them and lock them in place. So they also serve as canopies. And at night, of course, everything comes down and everything becomes flush. And then the thought was to also do a shield similarly, identically to what we've been using with the sun. Whole thing would be painted the Malaga green or a hunter green color, and then there would be some lighting. So these are the existing carts there. And again, keep in mind that's our first thought for these. Hmm? I don't think I did those before.
You know, we had seen a proposal for this, I don't know how many years ago that was, about 4 years ago. I mean,
It was for visitor.
Pardon?
For visitor center station.
No, it was for new vendor kiosks. I recall. Yeah. Yeah. In any case, okay. Is that your presentation?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any staff comments? No. Okay. No public comments. I'll close public comment. Open and close it. Commissioner Rios, do you have any questions? Commissioner Winnick. Commissioner Lavoie.
These are no wider than existing ones?
That's correct.
Okay.
Well, let me add to that. They're the same dimension. The current carts are
Which
a
dimension?
rectangle.
Yeah.
You know, if you see a photo of them,
So-
we're matching the longer and making it square. So we're getting a little wider. But the length is identical.
Yeah.
The width is drawn.
About 12 inches.
But I think the difference is the current ones, which are narrower.
My question, thank you.
I could just add the narrow
Nope,
ones
thank you.
have the fold-up sides. So that's
You're
really
pushing
what
it,
we're-
Ryan. Ryan.
I'm done.
Okay. Commissioner Murray, any questions?
Yeah, so Henry, enlighten us on, you're looking at the overall Paseo Nueve, and you are coming up with this design. So obviously they're going along with your other things like the ribbons and so tell us about that. How does that work?
Well, the thought is to aesthetically from the very beginning.
Mhm.
We got involved in the project is to find ways of tying it together and also inspire some of the new tenants that are going to come online for the use of certain materials like steel doors and windows and ironwork and so on. The hope is in working with Trey and Paseo Nuevo is that we begin to, as time goes by, begin to unify. The right now it's somewhat fragmented. Yeah, and if you remember many years ago when this Paseo Nuevo was built, we actually did have some long discussions about how do we not fragment the thing? How do we really, in some way, make everything, tied it in, including the signage, if you remember. We decided to go with three-dimensional signage for everything at one point. Well, this is the same attempt now. And, of course, we have to do it a bit at a time, in our minds, with the team and with our clients. That's the goal that we want to reach, is basically to create something that ties everything together.
Does that more or less answer your question?
Yeah, how many
Okay.
are there now?
How many are there? Currently 7. So we're keeping, in the photos you'll see all the existing locations. And then there's one new one proposed just on the inside of that Paseo one.
So they're on wheels, and then they go away at night and come out during the...
No, they stay, but they become larger.
They're on wheels.
One of the things that I think we don't like too much is that when they're closed, after businesses, they're not very, yeah. And so the idea was, in doing this fold-out things, that the panels, and we'll bring you some drawings later, the panels is that you're looking at them when they're in the closed position. In some spillage of lighting, perhaps over the canopy, that would be a lot more attractive than what we have there.
Commissioner Murray?
That's it, thank you.
I have a question. Why are you going square and taking up more space for pedestrian walking?
It's not that much more. I think with 6 inches on each side, I think it's 1 foot.
Yeah, there was a couple of reasons. One of the, when we looked at the existing and the mall asked all the existing tenants of these, what would they be looking for in new ones? Storage space and a little bit more retail space was one of them. And I was going to say the current ones have the little fold-up sides during business hours, which really then match our new, but we were just eliminating some of those operable parts.
And I'll be very candid with you. The square is easier to deal on the roof to come to a point than it is rectangle.
Okay, Commissioner Sharp, any questions?
Should this be going to our Paseo Nuevo ad hoc subcommittee?
Yes, I
First.
think it, yeah.
Or
First
next.
or next, I think. I think we want to get sort of a sense from the commission so that subcommittee has sort of a direction or a idea.
Sharp and Winnick are also on it.
Okay. Any questions, Commissioner Lavoie or Commissioner Boucher? I don't know why. I know. Commissioner Drury, any questions?
I'm not very good at mathematics, but if the swinging down panels are 2.5 feet wide, how do they cover a 5.5 foot? I don't get the mathematics. Will that not be a?
No, I know.
So it's an accordion kind of thing.
So 2.5 plus 2.5.
We were both
is
wondering.
5.
Yeah, what
And then they become
And you've got a 5'6" or
Thank you very
5'2"
much.
opening.
Got it.
Mathematically, may be off.
a little close.
Mr. Chair, in regards to the subcommittee, I know that Troy is going to begin some discussions with Jaime because he brought it up.
Right.
And so he'll probably be having a conversation with them to see what we can do. To see what we can do not only with this project, but with everything that comes in the future.
Ms. Gantz, do you know the status of that at all? Of Mr. Lamont? I mean, because I don't think we've actually, have we actually formed that subcommittee? Yeah, we have. It's here in black and white.
Yeah, but it's,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's not a scheduled meeting.
It's an ad hoc.
It's
You're right.
whenever
It's an ad hoc
Yeah.
subcommittee. So yeah. Okay. I mean, I for one have always found these kiosks extremely problematic for the Paseo. They interrupt pedestrian traffic, which is what the mall is for. It's for pedestrian traffic. What I recall this mall being designed for was impromptu and informal seating areas in these locations, and those have gone away since we've added, or since these kiosks have been added. So I am having a problem with the kiosk getting even wider and interrupting more of that traffic flow. Because if they're selling a hot item and there's a lot of people standing around that, it makes it even more difficult to get by. Through the Paseo, and the Paseo should be friendly for walking. So, whatever your proposal is, I'm just going to have a really hard time supporting it because of that fact. I have never felt that those kiosks were appropriate to this Paseo. It's appropriate to other malls, granted, but not this mall. This is a special mall, and what makes it special is things like not having these kiosks. And I'm not trying to say that these small business owners can't have their floor space and their display, but I just don't think that this is the appropriate mall for those kiosks. So that's where I'm coming from. Commissioner Lavoie.
I fully agree with you. Except this mall. I think there are locations in this within San Nuevo that these would work better, but I don't think they work in this Paseo right now. I mean, I fully agree. They get in the way of, I mean, even one person standing, getting a sales pitch, tends to block the walkway. The walkway is not that wide, really. And the times I've been there, it's been popular. There's lots of people there. That's a great thing. You know, and it does add to the liveliness, but more often than not, it gets in the way. And so I mean, that was my question about, you're going to make them wider? I mean,
yeah, and,
no.
And I know that those paseos were designed very sensitively as far as the width and those proportions to give a very comfortable human scale. I'm not saying that these kiosks don't bring that human scale down a little bit and maybe perhaps even better, but those paseos are narrow, and they're narrow for a reason. But that being said, I think we should send this off to an ad hoc subcommittee to work on it a bit. Everybody agree, or yeah? Okay. So, yes, Commissioner Winnick.
Can you hear me? Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Please. I think being one of the people who sits on that subcommittee, or will be sitting on that subcommittee, it's actually good for me to hear each of the commissioners weigh in, because that'll be a little more instructive. So before it just gets sent off to the committee, I'd like to hear more comments.
Okay. Anybody have any comments to add? I don't know. I maybe went from questions.
Well, since I'll hear myself first,
okay.
and then pass it on.
Commissioner Winnick.
So I guess I'm going to take a slight different, sort of somewhat sympathetic point of view, but slightly different point of view, is that having done a lot of retail and knowing what it takes to create an active, vibrant site, I think the Paseo Nuevo actually is very successful because it does have an activity sense there, and I think a lot of it is reliant on the density that's there. And I think these kiosks do help add that kind of interest and sense of destination even along that path, and I agree it does make it tighter. So I actually think that they're a benefit towards the life of the Paseo in that area. On the other hand, I also saw that they got larger, and one of the second things that I see that has me concerned is, and the canopy idea is kind of cute, the way it folds up and creates a sun canopy, but I also noticed in one of the photographs that it's getting very close to the awnings that are on the building. So I do think that there is an issue about the widths in the Paseo to make sure that it's going to work, that these are going to have this feature of something flipping up and everything else, that it doesn't start feeling overly congested. So I think that's something we do have to pay attention to. But the idea of newer little kiosks that are a nicer aesthetic, I'm in favor of. Okay. But I think the size needs to be studied.
Commissioner Arias?
I look at the kiosk as an incentive
to bring people in and marketing. They bring, you tend, depending upon them, you tend to go from one to another and side to the stores and things like that. So, and that's what the purpose is of the Paseo, is to sell merchandise and all. I would like to see them not enlarged, but I'm wondering if looking at their location might be a better way of blending them in. For instance, instead of having each of them like soldiers put two together or something like that, I don't know. But as far as an attractive incentive for merchandising for the consumer as well as the person, you're going to be okay? I can't do PCR with my back. I think it's a plus. And I think the subcommittee needs to weigh this, but again, possibly relocating or, might be a way to go. I don't know.
Any other comments? Ms. Murray?
Yes, I am more with Bill Lavoie and Phil. When I've gone through this paseo, there are always these crowds of people, or these people stop to see, and I'm not objecting to that. It's just that it takes away the feeling of the paseo, that sort of movement. And so I would look towards certainly not making any larger, but maybe positioning them. Like, for instance, I'm no trouble with this one here. I think that there's enough space around it so they're not just lined up all around the paseo. But these three, I have a hard time with these three. They're just, and that's just an important paseo there. Now in the La Cumbre Plaza, they really work well because I think it's a much wider promenade, and they can be on one side, and you have the middle, and they meander and whatnot. But here, it's just, space is tight, and I actually have found them to be obstructing the main stores, and I don't know how those people could stand one of these things in front of them, but I guess they're okay. But it's true that there's a crowd of people, and that means people come in and want to see it. So there's that ambiance, but I would look to see if there are way of spacing them or where it will work. So that's it.
Okay, Commissioner Sharp, anything to add?
Nothing further.
Commissioner Boucher.
I agree with whatever his name is here.
Mr. Sharp? Okay. Commissioner Drury, anything else to add to help the ad hoc subcommittee?
I do have a question. Why are there no vendor carts in the wider paseos?
Like Paseo 2,
Paseo 2, De La Place.
De La Place can't have them because it's a fire access. And then Paseo 6 is perhaps the same width, mostly.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll look at the repositioning of those and take into consideration how they interface with some of these entrances and storefronts.
All right. Does the subcommittee feel like they can take this on now? Okay, enough comments from the commission? Sure. No, I agree. I mean, you needed our comments for certain. So 2 week continue?
Well, do we schedule a time?
You get with staff, and staff will schedule. So why don't we start with 2 week? Maybe these guys can meet in 2 week, and then, or do you want to do indefinite?
So I'd rather have an indefinite because
Okay.
I don't know when.
Okay.
Okay, so who's on the subcommittee? Boucher, Sharp, Winnick?
Lavoie, and Winnick.
Oh, Lavoie.
Oh, not Lavoie. I'm sorry. Schallenberger and Winnick.
Wait a minute.
Boucher,
Boucher, Sharp.
Boucher, Schallenberger, Sharp, and Winnick.
Right here. Right here. Oh, it's
Yeah.
confidential. I don't
Sharp.
want to put that on screen. Yeah. Yeah. What time you weren't here? You weren't here, and we appointed you. All right. So I'll look to somebody to make a motion for an indefinite continuance. Can you actually? Okay. So motion by Boucher, a second by Arias for an indefinite continuance to meet with the ad hoc design subcommittee before returning. There you go.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Kent, would you mind if we took a 5-minute break? We're going to take a 5-minute break, if that's all right. A recess. And it's 1920 Laguna Street. This is here for final approval, being requested. Project was last reviewed on January 18th. Our last comments were, the motion was project design approval and continued indefinitely with the following comments. The project poses no negative adverse impacts to the historic structure. The proposal is appreciated, and the commission requests that the applicant continue to preserve the house. That's all.
That sums it up.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, we're looking for, details and things like that, Mr. Mixon. So,
Yeah.
we
So
could just go straight into that, I think.
yeah, the
unless-
plans didn't change. They've just been refined in terms of notes and details. Get to that. Those were the existing elevations that you saw before. Again, they proposed elevations where this is the portion. This is the portion of the addition. Again, none of these changed other than just the detailing or building sections with material denotions and so forth. Is this not on? Am I not speaking?
You're fine. You're fine.
So these are the exterior porch doors with head, sill, jamb details, all taken off of the existing structure, verified from the existing structure, and the interior, which I know you guys aren't very worried about. Likewise, the exterior windows, same thing. Details were all taken off the existing structure of exactly how those would be put together. Again, head, sill, and the jambs, two different jamb details.
Exciting stuff.
Yeah. And then replicating the existing eave detail with the integral gutter that's set back from the fascia. The rake detail has the flashing, copper flashing that comes up over the top of that. And then just our relationship of our shingles to the different locations, to grade, to the deck. Skylight detail. And then kind of edge, what do we have? What is that detail on?
Porch edge.
Porch edge, yeah. And then the actually the porch to the relationship to the grate as well. And then these are interior for the sauna details. So that's pretty much sums it up. I don't think there's anything else.
And I don't think there's any staff comments. No? Okay.
Yeah, cedar. We're going to use cedar.
Let me open public comment.
Okay.
You're done with your presentation?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I think one of the only other comments was about, because it is in the high fire zone, it's right on the edge at Laguna there. We met with fire department, and they would allow for us to still, because it's such a modest addition, do the cedar shingles and then back it with 5/8 chip.
Great. Okay. Open public comment. Seeing no public, I'll close public comment. And questions from the commission, or comments, or motion?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Lavoie.
Beautiful design, beautifully done set of detailing. Make a motion for final approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion for final approval by Lavoie, a second by Murray. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. Very well. Are you the owner? We appreciate your stewardship of this important piece of property. And good work, Kent.
Thank you.
All right.
Not from a critical point of view. We've done this before.
Yeah, it actually hides in. Well, we haven't done it yet, but it's replicating what's there.
Well, it wouldn't have worked last night.
You just want one?
My house, I had to go this deep, that it was pouring buckets over there. So we were
Our next item is not scheduled until 3:45. We are a half hour ahead. I will recess, and we will reconvene at approximately 3:40. Okay.
Every question you may have. Come on, Donna. You've told me before. You'll get out here one time. Well, we did.
I will reconvene the April 11th Historic Landmarks Commission meeting. Next item on the agenda is item number 5, 125 State Street. And this was last seen on April 7th, May 11th, 2011. And I will read the comments from that last meeting. It was continued indefinitely with positive comments to the Planning Commission. Appreciation was expressed for changes made by the applicant that reflect a response to comments previously made by the Commission. The size, mass, bulk, height, and scale of the project are appropriate for its location and neighborhood. Resolve the guardrail around the parapet. Provide details of the mosaic, and the trash enclosure as proposed is supportable and provides a significant opportunity for landscape screening. The action passed, Boucher opposed, Lavoie and Arias abstained, Drury, Schallenberger absent, but the motion carried. Okay, if you could.
Nobody's left.
Mr. Chair?
That's squeaky.
I was not here for the May 11th meeting. I looked at the video yesterday.
Okay, thank you. If you introduce yourselves for the record and give us a brief presentation, please.
Sure. Barry Burkus, AIA something else.
Michael Winkelstein, BP Architects.
And Trish Allen with Suzanne Elledge, Planning and Permitting.
When you speak, be sure to speak into the microphone, please.
Okay, we're here for project design approval, and if you want to give us final on working drawings, would be wonderful. So what we have in front of you is the comments answered that you threw at us last time that we were here. As you know, we went on to Planning Commission, had a great meeting there, and we have been working with our consultants. The building will be a LEED building. We hope to get to gold. So we have people working on all sides of us right now, which will not change the design of it, but is going to bring the building to what we feel is going to be a proud building as far as its sustainability. So nothing has really changed on the site plan that you're looking at other than more notes, so that we're noting everything here that might be questions to you regarding the walls and the distances that are from the ramps inward. But I think it's better talked to on the next sheet. I think most of the board is familiar with the building, and since you have seen it last, the changes that we have made to accommodate your questions and et cetera was all windows now are deep. We're a minimum of 14 inches deep in the windows that are exposed to the outside walls. Some of them are 12, but most of them are deeper than that, like the front doors here into the shop. We worked for the building department in developing the ramp system, which you see in front, to meet ADA and exits. So we did spend quite a bit of time with the building department. And what we've done here is started the ramp, as we've talked about, as far away as we can from the tracks. So the children will load from this edge or from this edge back here. We feel that's safe, and it gives us a chance to get them up in queue in front of the buildings if they get there before the buildings open, either front or back. And the building now, as we look at it, when you open the front doors inside, which isn't really much to do with HLC, but we've moved the emissions deck back, and the elevator itself is back slightly, so we get a straight through to the performance area in here, which will be colored. And this will be a area of exhibits. So the exhibit designers are working hard now on putting together a program for the building. But most of the things you see in front of you, you've seen before. There may be some slight shifts in a doorway or so, but on the exterior of the building, it's pretty much what you saw. We have details of the trash enclosure, which we'll look at. We have details of the wrought iron. We have details of the parapet wall, which you mentioned in opening. But on the first floor, this is pretty much what we've seen, and we'll show you the color boards in a second. On the second floor, the only thing that's changed is that the door to the outside viewing deck for the trains has moved to this point from this point, but the glazing across the building is pretty much the same. Everything that you see in here we've talked about before. The trellis along the edge we put originally in there because of the hotel windows looking down on that walk, and we were concerned that children coming into the building wanted to be in some type of cover rather than being in front of all the windows of the hotel. So this has not changed. This is where you see the plants is all rooftop planting, and I know Don had asked about that before. And if Susan gets here on time, we'll talk about all the landscape.
She's on her way.
Okay, great. The roof terrace has changed slightly in that because we're trying to get to a LEED goal, these columns that you see, and we'll show you a cross-section, indicate a solar array that is going to be held back far enough where it really is seen a little bit from where the train's coming from, but it won't be seen from the back street, and it can't be seen from the front or from the sides. And there'll be solar panels, too, on the roofs of the outbuilding, which is sitting on the side here. I'll show you the rail detailing here because we've been very careful to try to keep the rail so that any child won't climb over that, and I'll show you how we detail that. I worked with David Shelton on one at our house, which I'll show you the rail that we'd like to use. So the elevator comes to the roof. This is going to end up being green all the way around the edges, and then this will actually be displays that they're working on now that will be roof mounted. So this is a footprint of the solar arrays here and here. You can see we've held them back well off the road, and then they'll be hidden here on top of the roof behind parapet in the area of the stairway, etc., over the top of the office complex in here. This is where, in our discussions before, as you can see, we've made all the windows deep And I think that started with Alex Peugeot, if I remember, some time ago. And what we do, philosophically, what we're trying to do with the building is make it an adult and a child-friendly building. So we've kept the windows down in certain positions so a child can call that their own space. And our hope was, as a child looks at this building, they see a sandcastle, and they also see a building that talks to them as children, as well as mother and father. And we see this being a very active learning situation for both adult and child. So I'd like to, well, we're on this sheet. If we could look at the color boards, because you can relate that to the front of the building. This is taken from the Gaudi Barcelona idea, but we found some tiles that are really interesting. So this color board, and we have pictures to give you. This is a glass tile that is recycled, that we are going to use something, either this one or pieces of this, to assemble the same type of pattern that we see in this, which is kind of the beach. And that'll wrap the lower part of the tower, as shown here on the colored drawing. The fences, which I'll show you in cross-section, are this. Now, the reason we did this is kind of blowing willows when they worked on our house, when David worked on our house. But this is the way it's going to work around the parapet. We don't want the children to climb those fences, and we think that's a fairly smart thing. We have no more than 4 inches in between the pieces. They can't climb it either. So we have planting beds up there, which these will sit in, and they sit in back of the benches, which I'll show you in a minute too. What our desire is to make this part of the tower out of sand and do it in a dash coat, so that we end up with this feeling like a sandcastle rising out of the ocean or out of the tiles here. We're working with 2 companies in tiles. This one is offshore, but it's recycled. This is California and fully recycled. So, and they will pattern anything we want. So as we get down the line on this, we're going to probably have a pattern very close to this, pretty much these tiles that you're looking at, which will be in above the windows and on the base of the tower. And we did some patterning here for you to look at, because we think they will, bless you. Hello, Susan.
Hi.
These tiles are interlocking, so they will build any form we want as long as it's repetitive. So we have to design an interlocking tile which would wrap, and then they'll do any colors we want on this too. So as we get forward on this and find out our ability to use these as recycled, whether or not long trip on this, short trip on this, makes a difference in our points on the building. As we get down towards the gold, we'll see that. Roof tile here, stucco colors. This would be the body color, which is pretty much what we've represented from the beginning. This probably would end up being the ramp side in the front of the building, because we're afraid to put sand on that. We think that it'd probably be better to go ahead and take this color, which would be the top here on the tower, and probably the skirt here around the ramp walkway as it comes up. But then we want to really develop a dash coat that would have a lot of sand in it, that would end up feeling like it was a sand tower in this element here. The windows will have the same detailing above, which we've shown here, except the sills will be very plain in Santa Barbara. They may end up being glass. And the window colors themselves will probably be in that deep burgundy, kind of the Santa Barbara color. And probably the handrail details in metal will take that same color and maybe mute it slightly, but it'll end up being in a more of the magenta or the deep kind of an earth tone of some type with a little bit of red in it. So this is what we're looking at. Micah, do you have one of the renderings that show the view from the railroad station regarding the tracks? And no? Okay. Well, let me show you the details on the windows since we're here about. So what we're going to do is we're setting back, as I said, considerably. We're running our stucco down at head, and then running our mosaic tiles in here, and then running the flat tiles that'll end up being on the sill conditions. So this is pretty much the detail throughout the building, above the doors and the windows. Yeah, it's copied, so we'll leave that with you. So doors and windows are the drainage off the roof we're going to use in cast iron drains internally in the walls. So we're not going to have surface-mounted GI gutters and downspouts. So we'll take it from a cricket situation on the roof and roof drains and go through a cast iron system that will exit at the base of the building. So that will not be seen by the public, and we'll make sure that that's well insulated. We've worked hard with the railroad and with our consultants to make sure that the railroad side of the building is insulated as we can get it. And we're working well with Prin and the group on the lead portions of that also. In fact, they're doing something very interesting. They're going to grind up Levi's for the installation of this building. They're trying to get a donation of the people in the community to make that insulated wall. So they'll get a very high R rating.
Oh, here, let me give you mine now.
No, do me a favor.
No, please.
So our colors are all here. The sections are all there. And essentially all height is dimensioned well. Remember, we had to be out of the ground because of the FEMA area. So we're about 3.5, 3.6, I think it is, isn't it, out of the grade at the lowest spot. And that's all taken care of. The civil engineering's all been done. So we're pretty well along. In fact, we're on a schedule that's fairly tight because of the lease with the city and approval. So here, what you're seeing up in here, that iron, and I think there's a sketch more like this that essentially is this detail. Now, that's something that's open for discussion. We haven't spent a lot of time with David on this, David Shelton, but he did a great job for me by kind of blowing willows in the wind that would be great on the roof and be very safe for the children. And it sits in back of the bench and on some places on top of the parapet wall.
Let's say we wouldn't be seen in this top rail that you're showing.
No, that's going to end up looking more like this.
All right.
The computer can't do that very easily. We're having some issues trying to put it in the computer. So the gates would be this way, and I haven't had a lot of time to spend time with Susan, but I don't think I have a lot more to say unless you want me to say something else for you.
The only thing, if it wasn't clear, I'm Susan Van Adder, landscape architect, and that a lot of this railing is meant to be set back from the edge of the building, right, close to the seating. So it's actually set in, and there's planting between this railing in many instances and the edge of the building.
I think that's shown in the cross section, Susan. Why don't you take this for a minute and I'll maybe get to the sections. So wrapping around the back of the building, we're articulated because I think in one of our meetings we decided we wanted to get the mass of the stairway and everything off the back of the building, which we did do. You see that quite a bit in. We're repeating the tile in some situations above the heads like this. This is the bridge that connects the building at the second level over the top of our performance patio. And this is the roof tile. I think at one time we were playing with mosaics on this, and I think we came back in this meeting to go to a regular tile, rolled tile. And this, of course, is in the background. That's up on State Street. So the rails, which I think we have, yeah, here we go. Rails are back, like Susan talked about. These are planters that you'll do probably 12 inches or more of soil.
At the most,
yeah. And these will be unfriendly plants in most cases, so the kids aren't really interested in crawling into that area. I don't know what that vocabulary looks like. That's yours. So in most cases, this is back from the facade. You won't be reading that a lot. And this is where the solar panels are considerably back from the back road. And those are on a light frame. And we try to use the same detail. You'll see a cross-section of this. This is a trash enclosure, which is plaster with the gates on the trash enclosure. We want to build out of metal, which will probably be the same color as the window frames, and will match the roll-up on the side of the loading dock that we have. And the same thing on the entrance into the enclosure. And here are the solar arrays, which we try to pick up a small strut detailing of the iron that we'll be using in the fence just to ornament that slightly. And they're about 9 feet to the base, if I remember correctly. And the amount of solar panels, and we're working on now with the consultants, but it'll look like this. So we think that we responded to most of your questions. I think, Susan, if you could talk about landscaping, it would be great. on? I'm not saying you're not working. I'm not. I could use somebody to help me like that.
Copies here.
You want me to go?
Okay.
You want to change places?
Do we have copies of the landscape plan? No, they weren't
Sorry
submitted.
About that. Sorry about that.
Did you have landscape then? So we're all
Okay, so apparently the plans have been submitted, but I also brought a copy today.
Right. Well, how comfortable is the rest of the commission?
I can deal with it.
You can deal with
It's
it?
it's mo- it,
Don't worry about it, Allison. We'll, there's your pointer.
oh yes, it's a new one.
Yes, we had one
Every time.
commissioned by Mr. Drury.
Very good.
Hours of labor.
Yeah. And there's only one. Okay, so I think to address questions or comments would be the fencing around the around the signalman's building, and that is was suggested that it be the pipe railing that's there now. So I brought photos of that to confirm. So we would duplicate the pipe railing that's there now, and then we would have a mesh as a backdrop to that, so it wasn't climbable, but that would be a very subordinate to the look of the pipe railing.
So there would be a mesh infill.
There'd be a mesh infill all the way around to keep children in, and it would be non-climbable, and it would be black, and it would be it would be meant to be as subordinate as possible to the look of the pipe railing.
And where does that occur? I'm sorry.
Oh, it occurs as the fencing that goes along the edge where the Children's Museum interfaces with the train station. So that was the question for landscaping. Otherwise, everything is the same except the roof has been simplified. So previously there was a lot more green roof up here, and I do have the plans from the last time I presented. However, the submittal is what you're looking at right here. And that is all of these areas. There are areas that included vegetable gardens, which they decided to delete as a program element, and also green roofs. So now the planted area, it would look the same from the street. The planted areas are the same around the perimeter of the project. So just for context.
Good. So I'm sorry, can you describe some of the plant material that
Sure.
we would see from the sidewalk from the street?
Yes.
That we would see, the big stuff like.
Yes, I apologize for that. We had I had presented that last time, and so this is all a chaparral plant palette. So we call it the Elfin Forest, which is in the 60s. There was a book written about the chaparral called the Elfin Forest. So we're using the dwarf type of plants that occur in the chaparral, such as the scrub oak. We'd use the California fuchsia, some of the more dwarf ceanothus, and smaller growing plants like the native golden yarrow. So these are all sort of dwarf or diminutive, and they'll be attractive. We're also using a primary color scheme. And then at the front, we're using, at the front, we're using olive trees, and we're using sort of a mission garden landscape. The native grape and so forth would occur out here, and we felt that was compatible with El Pueblo Viejo. Then on the back side, we have a combination of a silvery rainwater garden, and bioswales take up some of the stormwater. And there had been a change but this is architectural change in the configuration of the entry. And then right against the elevation of the building, we have the coral reef landscape, which is using succulents to look sort of like a coral reef, but we also feel that the use of succulents is compatible with El Pueblo Viejo. And then at the street side on State Street, we're waiting for final plant selection to be compatible with the commercial project, what is the nature of the project? Entrada. Yeah. I wasn't sure if that was still the name.
It is, yeah.
Okay, the Entrada project across the street. So we'd like to wait and do what's compatible with the street trees in that area. We are planning, we do show cisterns at this location at this time, but we are looking at, because it's an urban site, and largely developed. We will be using a variety of stormwater management measures to meet the requirements of the city's guidelines.
What are these trees?
Let's see. The bigger trees, they'll be flowering trees. Do you want me to say which ones right now?
Barry was hoping for final today.
Oh, okay.
But you're not ready for final.
Okay.
I don't think.
What's that? Okay.
Well,
Golden rain tree.
No.
They're golden rain
the problem
trees.
is, Barry, is I don't see sizes, and I don't yet see an irrigation plan. So
Yeah, we don't have an irrigation
yeah,
plan.
landscape could return on consent if architecture gets final. Continue, Ms.
Okay,
Burnett, I'm
so
sorry.
I'd love to come back on consent. Okay.
Good answer.
So,
Anything
okay.
else?
I think as far as building on what we had presented previously, that's what I had intended to talk about today.
Great. Okay. Any staff comments? No? Okay. I'll open public comment. I have no... Oops, I do. It's a late submission. All right. We have Mr. Kellum DeForest.
Kellum DeForest, I want to commend Mr. Burkus on his very...
Turn on the microphone, please. Thank
Excuse
you.
me. Kellum DeForest, I want to commend Mr. Burkus on his very interesting design for this building, and also the landscape architect too for the plant material. I have a question that may not even fall into your purview. Where is the parking for the museum visitors? And what is the route for the children from the parking to the museum?
Okay. Thank you.
Also, I wanted to comment on the, does the mesh infill conform to, but on that pipe fence to the EPV guidelines? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeForest. We also received a letter from Union Pacific basically saying that the application is inaccurate because it lists an inaccurate owner and there was no consent by them for an application. However, we have been assured by Ms. DeBusk, the project planner, that the Children's Museum is on property that is entirely owned by the City of Santa Barbara as a successor to the redevelopment agency. Therefore, no permission or agent authorization from UP is required. Okay? Just wanted to read that into public comment. I will close public comment and go to questions from the Commission. Commissioner Drury.
Yeah, I was wondering if it would be possible for, I'm looking on the landscape sheet, first landscape sheet, if those, the curving walkways and the mosaic next to it, if that could be curved back away from the signalman's building.
Talking about right here?
Yes, and then the signalman's building. I would love to see that thing just kind of left as open as possible in terms of viewers from both State Street and the railroad station. If I think that pipe might get in the way somewhat, but if it was curved back.
Oh, this pipe?
Yes, instead of those right angles around the building, if it was just sort of opened up at an angle so that the building sort of sat there by itself as it does. Something like that. That would be a question.
And it from both directions?
I would think so. Yeah. I mean, with that, I don't know if that would interfere with the design, except to cut off that rectangle.
As a designer, I mean, well, I guess we're just taking comments, right?
No, this is questions. So he's
Okay.
asking you a question. Is that possible? Do you see?
Okay, and if you look up on the screen, the idea is so that we're not interfering with the line of sight to the Sigelman's building.
Or not crowding the
not crowding it.
building.
Actually, it might feel more historic if we didn't curve it back, but if we
Chamfer the edges.
if we chamfer the edges, that might feel
Corners,
more in keeping historically, because
Okay.
the curved part just feels. It doesn't feel very El Pueblo Viejo.
No, I think an angle or chamfer or
Yeah, an angle. So then instead of the fence line going like this, the fence line would come up and go across and come, and the fence line come up and cut off the corner and go across.
Okay, yeah, she nodded her head.
Okay.
Or at least I'm going to tell you she nodded her head.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions, Commissioner Boucher?
No, he asked one of my questions. I was concerned about how close that comes to the signalman's point.
Commissioner Sharp, any questions? No. Okay, great.
No
during
questions?
during comments, right?
Put an exclamation point.
My question is with respect to that pipe rail fence. It seems to me that we did a fence or a guardrail similar to that with the infill okay. So and that was something that we a design that we bought off on. So
Okay.
if you want to look
Do you
at
remember
that,
what project?
It should be there already.
Oh.
It's next to one of the bridges.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, good.
And the other question is how tall will that fence be? This fence here.
So,
It's going to match the existing fence, which is down in this area here. About 42, yes, something like that.
okay, 42 inches to match existing.
Okay. Commissioner Murray, any questions?
No, I was concerned about that mess. And it seems like they're,
Approved it once before.
so,
Okay.
so this railing is existing, right? The history, and it's part of the history, right? Got it. Okay, so they need to be preserved and
Okay. Commissioner Lavoie, any questions?
Yes, Mr. Perkins. Show me what the material is for the columns that are between the windows, the bi-level windows.
I think those are spaced pretty far apart, if I remember correctly, and right now, those windows, I believe,
The column that's in the middle.
it probably end up being the same as the sash. It'll probably be wrapped with the same material that the sash is, so it'll end up in the burgundy color. It's not wide enough to be stuck on.
So it'll be metal.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Winnick, any questions?
I don't have any, thank you.
Commissioner Arias, any questions?
Yes, I have a couple. Have you considered efforts to reduce the amount of tagging in the area? Because I look at your mesh and knowing how difficult it is to clean tags off meshes and things like this, I just wonder if you considered how to make this as tag-free, safe as possible.
So you're
'Cause
referring
there's
to
a lot
the
in that area.
fencing? You're referring to the fencing?
I'm referring to everything, the building, and the mesh. In particular, I've had experience with the mesh. That's what came home to me. But there's a lot of tagging that goes on around the railroad station in that area, and I just would like to see the building stay as pristine as possible. So looking at things from tagging standpoint, I like the non-child-friendly plants that were mentioned and things like this. Things like this are poison oak, you know.
Yeah. Except you have to tell people what that means.
The other thing rattlesnakes work, yes.
Go ahead, Commissioner Arias has the floor.
Then I look at the sign that you have and wonder if that has been approved. Okay. And then the last question I have is, because we're going to be bringing children into this, and I assume there'll be school buses and things like that, could you explain a little bit where you think the buses are going to park and all? I have missed this.
May I add to that, where the cars are going to park?
Wherever you want to add to, please.
I think I can answer both
And
those.
thank you.
The bus drop-off is on the back, and then there's direct access in ramps for ADA and up a small stairway at this point. We will be here limited hours, so it's not going to be in conflict with the people coming home from work. I think it stops.
It's 2 buses, 4 days a week, and you'll be.
I can
speak to.
Go ahead, Miss Allen, please.
Thank you. 2 buses, 2 times a day. There'll be a loading zone on the Kimberly side for the children to be dropped off and congregate and escorted into the building. So it'll be a loading zone from 9 o'clock to 1 o'clock, 4 days a week during the school year.
Then you will be restricting the number of buses that can come.
2 buses.
That's the limit.
2 buses will come in the morning. Those 2 buses will come back in the afternoon to pick the children up.
Okay. Because I think it's going to be very popular, and I see the demand for more buses coming along.
No, that's all that can be accommodated
Okay.
in the museum. And then my understanding is the buses leave and go either do other field trips, that kind of thing, or they go park near Alameda Park, and then they come back.
Or they go tag fences.
Okay.
No, that's what you do. But I that's my concern, is that there would be enough flexibility with the bus thing. Thank
We
you.
worked very closely with transportation staff on that. I'd be happy to answer the other questions if you like.
Should we talk to where the parking is going to be for the building, how they get to it?
We are working on an off-site parking agreement with the city, so there is adequate parking supply in the public lot, in the depot lot, and that is, again, reviewed by staff and approved by the Planning Commission. In terms of the path of travel, they will use the State Street sidewalk
Commissioner Murray had more
and
questions.
be with parents.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I had a question on the architecture. I wanted to know a little bit more about the tiling and the glass and the, yeah. So
Sample board.
I wasn't.
Or you know what? We can just
Yeah,
use
we
this. You just use. We'll just
Yeah.
use this. This is easy enough.
Yeah. So,
The board with the Gaudi.
yeah, I wasn't clear. So you are saying that this part, all of this part, is going. Oh, there we go. Thank you. So all this area here is going to be this pattern.
Probably something very close to that in a horizontal dimension, not vertical. It's on the board vertically, but it'll probably wrap around and be much like the beach and the water. And it's taken from the colors of the glass. And that all goes back to the feeling of what Gaudi was doing in Barcelona in many of the buildings.
You just put it over here.
Bring it.
So he borrows some thought from both Gaudi and Hundewasser and some of the tile detailing that are in the parks in Barcelona. And of course, this is from the Hundewasser buildings in Vienna and such. But here's a lot of that here. And the glass looks more like the water, and that's why we're going here. We're probably doing that first, though, so that it's not a glaring finish.
Thank you.
Commissioner Drury.
Hundewasser.
One of the great ones. Yeah. I have a couple of questions.
Go right ahead.
The traffic circulation fishtails into another project, which is
I
the
think it's
Mason Street
dovetails, not
Bridge.
fishtail.
Is it fishtail or dovetail?
Dovetail.
There we go. I thought it was going to fishtail. It's dealing with a creek.
Yes.
So there's a question of if that's going to go one way or not, which has a great impact on which way the buses are going to go. If it's going to go one way down toward the ocean, then the buses will have children crossing the street, as opposed to coming up. If it's going to be one way toward Mason Street, then they're going to be Then they're going to be. If it's coming down this way, they'll be parking here. The kids will get out and go into the back of the. If it's going up that way, that's fine.
I think it's going
So
that direction.
then we don't know about that yet. That's kind of
Mr.
something that
Busk, I
needs to
think,
be-
can
I
add to
can
that.
respond somewhat
Thank you,
to that,
madam.
but it hasn't been resolved yet, as you know. It's going to be going to the Transportation Circulation Committee later this month. But my understanding is that if it were one way, it would be going in the direction so that the buses would be on the correct side of the street, and then to leave, they would just continue around to Chapala.
Thank you.
And the only other question is, am I safe in assuming that the on the color palette there that the tower, the kind of yes, that color, is that a bit more saturated than you expect to see in real life?
That is. It's probably going to be closer to the base color, which is trying to play off the sand.
Okay,
which this
all
doesn't
right.
do a good job
Great.
on it.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions from any commissioners? How about comments? Commissioner Rios, prepared to make any comments?
Well, first of all, I think it's a very exciting building, and I like it. I must have like it. It's well, Gaultier is my favorite architect, so. But I am concerned about the tagging, which I would like the applicant to consider. I also find the work that you did to make sure that the children are safe within the building is really outstanding. Kids can do some of the stupidest things. Well, so do adults, but you've really tried to avoid any disasters that could happen, and I think you're to be complimented and commended for it. I know that this is far away from EPV, but it is Spanish in the style of Barcelona and Gaudí, and I do like it.
Commissioner Winnick? A green light will be apparent.
What would they do without you?
First off, statement. I wasn't here back when this was last reviewed, but I did go and review the video just 2 days ago from May 11th. And I have a feeling my comments, I don't know, might be maybe, I don't know if they might run against the grain. Overall, I'm like pretty good, but I'm a little trying to reconcile the finishes as they go around the building and around the tower. And what I see is a body of building that has kind of this overall feel, and I sort of feel like the fact that the tower is treated differently from top to bottom makes it divided from the rest of the building. So somehow I would like to see some kind of uniformity where the coloration continues, so that way where the separate expressions are happening reads better to me. So for instance, and I understand the idea of the sandcastle and the sand color, but looking at the corner where there's in the middle section, you have that sand zone. Exactly. And if that were, for instance, more unified with the rest of the building body color, for me it would make the tower more integrated as part of the building. And then you'd have that expression of the mosaic below and the color and the fun that brings. So anyway, that's just the one thing I wanted to comment on. And that's it.
Okay. Commissioner Lavoie, comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've spoken with Mr. Burkus at a private occasion about this project as disclosure. It's an interesting building. It's an interesting design. It absolutely pushes the limits of what I consider acceptable in the district, but it has a record of approvals. So I'm not going to go there.
You just did.
I just did. Having stated, he's come a long path to get where he is today. The only thing that I don't think is allowable are exposed solar panels, period. They cannot be above a parapet. We spent an awful long time with staff and crafting how solar panels could be used and be acceptable in a historic district, and we came to the compromise position that they can be behind parapets. They cannot be exposed anywhere on the building. So that's the one thing that will have to change. The other thing is somewhat like Mr. Winnick's comment. I sort of enjoy the conceit that the tower is a sandcastle, but the top of it needs to sort of loosen up. The very top element either needs to flare at the top or slump at the bottom. It needs to be hand-drawn as opposed to computer-drawn or very loosely computer-drawn and modeled. It's just too rigid to be part of that undulating parapet that you've got going. It needs to be more a part of that undulation. Otherwise?
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Murray, comments?
Yeah, I really agree with the comments made, Bill Lavoie and Mr. Winnick, on the exposed solar. Because you've got all these nice gardens, and what we're going to want to see is just the garden and not any of the solar panels. And I too also, that tower is going to be the sort of the special part of this otherwise, kind of a clean building. And so if it's the undulating, I think would, at the top, would really help it.
Perhaps another way to describe it might be more organic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Commissioner Sharp, any comments?
I would say more whimsical, not organic. I know you.
He understands. I don't think anybody needs to say it again. Yeah.
Other than that, I think it's, as I said before, it's a stretch, but we've come a long way together, and it's a good project.
Commissioner Murray?
Just one, I was glad to hear that you are being sensitive to the brightness of these glass. Yeah. So.
Okay. Commissioner Boucher, any comments?
Well, I'm still having trouble with choosing.
Okay. I was going to comment to that, but
That may be just a thing of mine. I think there are a lot of things about this. I think the referral to a sandcastle is very obscure to a 10-year-old. But, oh my.
just when I thought I had you trained.
Okay, well, I think those also, I'm a little taken aback by this winding path in the back. Children are not going to go down the winding path. They're going to go straight across, unless my four were different.
Well, I'm sure they were. Okay. Any other comments, Commissioner Boucher?
They love labyrinths.
At the moment, that's pretty much it.
Commissioner
Okay.
Drury?
Yes. First of all, I'd like to compliment Mr. Burkus and the landscape architect.
She has a name. It's Miss
For
Van
these,
Atta.
I'm sorry?
She has a name.
Miss Van Atta. I didn't know that. Thank you. I forget things. I really appreciate the fact that you've got these little biosystems. It's very playful and very educational at the same time. I like the project in general. I do think the tower could use restrained whimsy.
You got it. You got it.
And because the rest of it is whimsical, but not overly so. And I think that it could be there's something that could be done with those arches to make them a little less archy. There we go.
More whimsical.
But I think the project is
Rapunzel up there.
I think it's going to be a landmark project in Santa Barbara. Thank you.
Just briefly on the landscape. As I've said before, I think you've really wrapped your head around the principle and the thoughts behind enticing children and educating them. I am somewhat dismayed, though, that it's been scaled back. I think you had a lot going on, which was a wonderful opportunity for the public to explore. I agree about the photovoltaic cells. They need to be hidden by the parapet. Also, with respect to Commissioner Boucher's comment about the trees on the roof, I've done quite a bit of investigation on rooftop gardens, and what I found is either the rooftop garden is cloistered and you don't see it from the street or public way, or it is expressed at the edge of the building, and you've done that. You've brought it to the edge of the building so that it historically has a place in design. So I think seeing the trees with that plant material coming over the edge is perfectly acceptable.
Whatever you say, boss.
That being said, I think the landscape is going to be a wonderful addition to the museum itself. It's going to be part of the learning environment as well. Any other comments?
Yes, I do have it, Mr.
Commissioner
Chair.
Drury.
Just to make sure that the signalman's building is honored appropriately, and that viewway is opened up. And I also would like to make a positive comment on the material of the fencing that you and David Shelton came up with. That's lovely. Thank you.
I know that the landscape is not ready for final approval. Who feels that the architecture is ready for approval? Anyone?
Yes.
Commissioner Drury?
Make a motion.
See if it flies.
For the board?
Yes.
One thing that is not included at this point is the commemoration, the plaque, and exactly what that's going to look like. There's a location shown on the plan, but you don't have details
That could,
yet.
to consent or something, yeah. Okay.
I'd like to make a motion for final approval
Of,
Project design
of
approval
the-
and final approval then.
project
Thank
design
you.
approval and final approval of the floor plan of the
or just say the architecture.
architecture of the Children's Museum.
Okay. We have a motion. We have a second by Lavoy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. We just didn't want to see you again. I'm just kidding.
I'm going to vote no. Yeah.
Commissioner Arias.
Want to separate it
Commissioner
out.
Boucher voted no.
Well, I haven't taken the vote yet. We're under discussion, I think.
It's
Aren't
not
we?
detailed enough to
Oh, you did? Sorry. Sorry,
So
sorry.
what's,
Beg your pardon.
so what's,
Yeah, the comments about the
Gloria has
tower.
it.
Right, so those
You wanna
go back
recap-
to consent? No, I'm just kind
Oh.
of wondering, how is that?
Maker of the motion, do those come back to consent?
Yes. Oh, come back to consent
Well,
for
just
the.
whatever it did, I didn't
Lucky
expect
you.
to hear that as part of the motion.
Yeah.
Okay, why don't you rephrase the motion?
Move final approval of the architecture.
Project design approval and final
And
approval.
final approval of the architecture with the following comments, as I can recall them. Honoring the signalman's building is important, paramount. Add more restrained whimsy to the State Street elevation of the tower.
Solar
PV arrays, the photovoltaic arrays, solar.
Solar panels.
The solar panels need to be below the parapet, below eye level.
The sign has to go back to,
And the sign, which we haven't, yeah.
no, that has to be done.
make
Is that
Below the level
agreeable with the seconder of the motion?
and what about the landscaping?
Landscaping to return to the full commission.
of, oh, yeah.
Do we, I thought we didn't
And the
split,
pipe rail is acceptable as presented?
Okay, Gloria, do you want to read us back the comments, please? Ms. Schaefer? Oh, we don't have a microphone for her?
Project design approval and final approval of the architecture and return to consent calendar with the following comments. Honoring the signalman's building is important. Add more restrained whimsy to the State Street elevation of the tower. Solar panels are to be below eye level. Landscaping to return to the full commission. The pipe rail is acceptable as presented.
Correction.
Correction.
The solar panels need to be below the parapet.
Below the parapet.
And then practice restrained whimsy on the State Street elevation. It should be on the whole tower, on the top of the whole tower. So just strike State Street elevation, please.
And another correction is the mesh on the railing should be like the other.
The mesh on the railing shall match previously approved installations.
Can we ask for preliminary approval of the landscape plan?
You got that, Ms. Schaefer?
Mesh on the railing shall match previously approved installations.
Correct.
Nearby.
Nearby. Okay, and...
I have a question.
Yes,
So the only thing that's coming back to the full board is landscaping?
to the full board, correct,
Is
yes.
something going to consent?
Yes.
So it's
The
PDA
PV
and final
raise.
approval and indefinite
tower.
continuance to consent?
tower.
Well, the tower.
To consent?
You want indefinite or 2 week?
We'll be ready in 2 weeks.
2 week,
To consent?
to consent
For?
for the architecture. How much time do you
Oh,
need
I
for landscape? Indefinite? Or 2 week?
You just need to specify your plant types.
And show an irrigation plan.
2 weeks or indefinite?
I think we could do it in 2 weeks.
What would you like, door number 1, door number 2, or door number...
And that's to the full
Full commission. Okay, so 2 week continuance to the full commission on landscape.
under the motion?
Hold on.
I thought it was to consent.
The architecture is to consent.
Landscape is to full board.
Landscape is to full board.
In 2 weeks for both?
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can we give landscape preliminary approval or project design approval at this point? Correct?
Yes, we can.
The scans?
Okay, so, yes, it's going to be project design approval and final approval, and continue 2 weeks to consent for the architecture.
Correct.
With the comments.
Correct.
And then landscaping is project design approval, and continued 2 weeks to the full board.
Perfect. Perfect.
Got it.
Okay. And I already took the vote, so we're good. You guys understand the motion? Okay. Oh, was that a separate motion? Okay. Okay. So all in favor? Opposed? Opposed?
Yes.
So you have project design approval on landscape.
Thank you.
You have project design approval and final approval on architecture.
Thank you guys very much.
Okay. Just a point of order business. It seems that the consensus of the commission would like to go back to the 1:30 meeting time. So starting on April, what would that be? 25th. We will be meeting at 1:30 p.m. Everybody understand that?
1:30.
Motion, or meeting adjourned.
Thank you.